The Rust Bucket. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the TSS Defiant, watching alien ships pass by with their customary mix of disdain and amusement. Her vessel, appearing as little more than a patchwork of outdated technology and makeshift repairs, drew the usual array of condescending glances from passing crews. The massive Centauri trading station before them sparkled with advanced technology, making the Defiant look even more out of place. Another fascinating reaction from our Arxian friends. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez reported from her sensor station, her voice carrying a hint of carefully controlled mirth. They're wondering if we've managed to upgrade from fusion power to anything civilized yet. Sarah allowed herself a small smile, maintaining her composure as she watched a sleek Arxian cruiser slide past their position. The vessel's crystalline hull seemed to mock the Defiant's apparently crude exterior. Let them wonder, Lieutenant. Status of our surface degradation systems. Operating perfectly, Captain. Our hull looks exactly as primitive as it did yesterday, possibly even a bit worse near the starboard nacelles. Engineering's quite proud of those new rust patterns. The Defiant's true nature remained hidden beneath layers of carefully crafted deception. What appeared to be corroded panels and aging systems were actually advanced metamaterials, capable of absorbing and analyzing any scan directed their way. Each patch of apparent rust contained enough computing power to run a small city, all disguised as the desperate repairs of a species struggling to keep up with galactic standards. Captain, we're picking up increased chatter from the Arxian military channels. Communications Officer Kai Paddle reported, his fingers dancing across his holographic interface, carefully hidden beneath what appeared to be an ancient physical keyboard. They're not even bothering to encrypt most of it anymore. Why would they? We're just the primitive humans with our outdated technology. Sarah moved to the center of the bridge, her worn captain's uniform completing the image of a human officer trying to maintain dignity while commanding an obsolete vessel. What are they saying, Mr. Patel? They're discussing fleet movements near the Epsilon sector. Significant ones. 3 battle groups have already moved through this area in the past week alone. Kai's expression grew serious. They're calling it Operation Cleansing. The bridge crew maintained their relaxed postures, but Sarah could feel the tension building. The Arxian hegemony had been expanding aggressively over the past year, absorbing or subjugating smaller species with their supposedly superior technology. Humanity's colonies lay directly in their path, but the Arxians had dismissed them as barely worth conquering, a primitive species that would fall quickly when the time came. Dr. Hansen. Sarah called to her chief scientist, who was purposefully hunched over what appeared to be an antiquated microscope. How are our special projects progressing? Dr. Emma Hansen looked up, her gray hair deliberately unkempt to complete the image of an overwhelmed human scientist. Quite well, Captain. Our quantum entanglement array is fully operational, though it looks suitably primitive. The Arxians scanned it 3 times today and dismissed it as a failed attempt at faster-than-light communication. Sarah nodded, pride swelling in her chest. The Defiant represented humanity's greatest deception, a ship designed to look like everything the galaxy expected of them, while hiding capabilities that would shock their overconfident neighbors. Every piece of apparent junk, every exposed wire, every flickering light served a purpose in maintaining their carefully crafted image. New contact, Maya announced, her voice carefully neutral. Arxian Dreadnought. Supremacy class. They're approaching on an intercept course. She paused, checking her readings. They're scanning us. And yes, there's the usual laughter from their crew channels. Places everyone. Sarah ordered calmly. Remember, we're the struggling humans, just trying to keep our outdated ship running. Mr. Patel, make sure our communications have that charming delay they've come to expect from us. The massive Arxian vessel drew alongside the Defiant, its crystalline hull dwarfing the human ship. Sarah could almost feel the condescension radiating from its command deck. The communication request came through with the expected mix of protocol and barely hidden disdain. Human vessel. The Arxian commander's holographic image flickered to life above what appeared to be a crude projector. Your presence in this sector has been noted. We suggest you consider returning to your own space. Military exercises will be conducted here soon, and we would hate to see your primitive vessel damaged by accident." Sarah activated her response, making sure it carried the slight static they'd come to expect from human communications. "Understood, Commander. We're just conducting some routine trade runs. Our colonies depend on these routes, as I'm sure you know. We'll try to stay out of your way." The Archean commander's crystalline features shifted in what passed for amusement among their species. "See that you do. It would be unfortunate if your people learned too harshly that they're not ready for the deeper reaches of space." After the transmission ended, Sarah maintained her position for several long moments, knowing the Archeans would be watching. Only when Maya confirmed they were out of standard scanning range did she allow her posture to change. "Send everything we've recorded to Fleet Command. Use the quantum array, but make it look like we're still using standard faster-than-light communications. Add plenty of errors to make it convincing." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their apparent clumsiness hiding movements that had been rehearsed to perfection. The Defiant's true sensors, hidden within its rough exterior, had already analyzed every aspect of the Archean dreadnought, from its energy signatures to its weapon configurations, information that would prove invaluable when the hegemony finally showed its true intentions. "It's almost sad," Dr. Hansen mused, still maintaining her disheveled appearance despite the Archean's departure. "They're so convinced of their superiority that they can't imagine we might be more than we appear." Sarah watched the dreadnought disappear into faster-than-light travel, its crew never suspecting that their supposedly primitive neighbors had just gathered enough tactical data to neutralize their most powerful vessel. "That's humanity's greatest advantage, Doctor. We've learned through our own history that underestimating your opponent is the first step toward defeat." The Defiant continued its patrol, looking to all the galaxy like nothing more than a struggling human vessel barely managing to stay in space. But beneath its carefully crafted exterior, it gathered intelligence that would soon prove vital to humanity's survival. The Archeans would learn, too late, that appearances could be deceiving, and that sometimes the most dangerous predator was the one that played at being prey. Hidden in plain sight. 2 weeks had passed since the Archean dreadnought's warning, and the Defiant's position near the Centauri trading station had yielded more intelligence than anyone had anticipated. Captain Sarah Chen watched from her command chair as the 7th Archean battle group this week emerged from faster-than-light travel, their crystalline ships casting prismatic patterns across the Defiant's deliberately scratched viewport. "They're not even trying to hide their movements anymore," Lieutenant Rodriguez noted, her fingers dancing across her sensor console in movements disguised as clumsy adjustments. "This group is larger than the others, 15 capital ships, plus support vessels." Sarah nodded, maintaining her carefully crafted appearance of mild concern mixed with resignation. "Mr. Patel, are they still broadcasting their tactical communications in the clear?" "Yes, Captain," Kai replied, his station crackling with artificial static. "They're discussing final positioning for something called Phase 1. They're calling it a sanitation operation now, not even bothering with the pretense of military exercises." The bridge crew maintained their act of barely competent operation, while their ship's true systems, hidden beneath layers of apparent decay, recorded and analyzed every detail of the Archean fleet. What looked like patches of corrosion on the Defiant's hull contained quantum sensors that could map an entire ship's internal structure. Each piece of exposed wiring, supposedly jerry-rigged to keep the ship running, housed computing systems more advanced than anything the Archeans had ever encountered. Dr. Hansen emerged from what appeared to be a maintenance shaft, her hair wild and her uniform stained with lubricant. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, her voice carrying just the right note of nervous excitement. "Our primitive atmospheric processors have picked up something fascinating." Sarah followed the scientist to her station, making sure to stumble slightly as their ship produced an entirely artificial shudder. The display Hansen pulled up looked impressively outdated, its holographic elements flickering in ways that made other species shake their heads in pity. Look at these energy signatures. Hansen pointed to what seemed like crude graphs, but were actually incredibly sophisticated quantum analysis displays. They're not just bringing in warships. These readings suggest they're deploying some kind of field generator network. They're creating a web that could cut off entire sectors from faster-than-light travel. Sarah's expression remained neutral, but her mind raced through the implications. The Arctians weren't just planning an attack. They were preparing to isolate and systematically eliminate human colonies, and they were doing it right in front of what they thought was a helpless observer. "New contact," Rodriguez announced, adding a slight tremor to her voice. "Arxian diplomatic vessel approaching. They're hailing us. Places everyone," Sarah ordered, settling into her captain's chair with deliberate awkwardness. "Remember, we're just the primitive humans who don't understand what we're seeing." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing an Arxian diplomatic officer whose crystalline features were arranged in what Sarah had learned to recognize as barely concealed contempt. "Captain Chen," the alien's voice carried artificial warmth. "Your vessel has been in this sector for an unusually long time. Are you experiencing technical difficulties again?" Sarah activated her response, making sure the transmission quality was properly degraded. "Nothing serious, Ambassador. Just some routine maintenance issues. You know how these old ships can be." She gestured vaguely at the exposed conduits running along the bridge ceiling. Conduits that actually housed some of the most advanced sensor systems ever developed by humanity. Of course, the ambassador's features shifted in what passed for a sympathetic smile. "However, I must insist that you conclude your repairs quickly. This sector will soon be quite active. It would be regrettable if your vessel were to be caught in events beyond your understanding." "We appreciate your concern, Ambassador," Sarah replied, adding just the right touch of wounded pride to her voice. "We'll try to wrap things up here shortly." After the transmission ended, the bridge remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Kai spoke up from his communication station. "Captain, I've been analyzing their diplomatic channels. They're not just planning an attack. They're preparing for a full invasion. They've already divided up human space into administrative sectors." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. "They really believe we have no idea what's coming, don't they? Dr. Hansen, status of our special projects." The scientist straightened, dropping her affected nervousness. "The quantum mirror array is fully operational, Captain. Every time they scan us, we're not just recording their sensor data, we're mapping their entire technological framework. We know more about their ship's capabilities than their own engineers do. And they still think those scans are just bouncing off our primitive hull plating," Rodriguez added with a quiet laugh. "The amount of data we've gathered while they're busy mocking our outdated technology is staggering." Sarah moved to the viewport, watching as another Arxian warship passed by, its crew probably laughing at the seemingly decrepit human vessel. Humanity learned long ago that sometimes the best place to hide is right in the open. They're so convinced of their superiority that they can't imagine we might be more than we appear. "Message from Fleet Command," Kai announced. "They've received all our data. The quantum entanglement network is working perfectly. The Arxians still think we're limited to standard faster-than-light communications." The massive Arxian fleet continued to gather, their ships filling the sector with displays of power meant to intimidate. They never suspected that their every movement, every communication, every weapon signature was being recorded and analyzed by the very vessel they dismissed as primitive. "We've got movement," Rodriguez reported suddenly. "The fleet is shifting formation. Looks like they're preparing for their first push into human space." She paused, checking her readings. "They're not even bothering to encrypt their tactical channels anymore. The attack order just went out in the clear." Sarah nodded, her expression hardening. "Send the signal to Fleet Command. Use the standard channels. Make it look like we're panicking." She turned to her crew, her voice carrying new steel. "The time for playing helpless is almost over. Soon they'll learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks like prey. The Defiant maintained its position, appearing to all observers as nothing more than a pathetic example of human technological backwardness. But beneath its rough exterior, systems of unprecedented sophistication prepared for the coming conflict. The Arctians would learn, far too late, that they should have looked more closely at the ship they had dismissed as harmless. The first strike. The attack began without warning. Arctian warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation around Haven Colony, their crystalline hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. The Defiant watched from its position near a small asteroid field, still maintaining its facade of a primitive vessel desperately trying to avoid notice. Multiple energy signatures, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her voice steady despite the tension. They're powering up their main weapon arrays. Targeting systems are active. She paused, checking her readings. They're not even bothering to scan for defenders. They think this will be easy. Captain Sarah Chen stood at her command station, watching as the massive Arctian fleet moved into attack position. The enemy's confidence was absolute. Why wouldn't it be? They thought they were about to crush a helpless human colony protected by nothing but outdated technology. Message from Fleet Command. Kai announced from his communication station. Authorization code received. We are cleared to proceed with Operation Revelation. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Very well. Dr. Hansen, initiate quantum field collapse. Let's show them what humanity's primitive technology can really do. The scientist's fingers flew across her console, inputting commands into what appeared to be an ancient computer system. Quantum field initialized. All those scans they've been doing of our primitive hull. They're about to get a nasty surprise. The Arctian fleet launched their first volley. Thousands of energy weapons lighting up space as they targeted what they thought were Haven Colony's defensive installations. But their shots passed through empty air, striking nothing but carefully crafted holographic projections. They're realizing something's wrong, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. Their tactical channels are lighting up with confusion. They can't find the real colony defenses. That's because they've been looking at reflections for months, Dr. Hansen explained, her earlier affected nervousness completely gone. Every scan they did of our hull didn't just bounce off. It created a quantum entanglement link. We've been feeding them false data since day one. The Arctian fleet's perfect formation began to waver as confusion spread through their ranks. Their sensors, supposedly the most advanced in known space, couldn't penetrate the quantum interference field that had been building for months, powered by the very scans they had used to mock human technology. Their flagship is launching fighters, Rodriguez announced. Standard search pattern. They still think they're dealing with primitive human defenses. Sarah's voice carried new authority as she gave the order they'd been waiting months to give. Initiate metamaterial transformation. Let's show them what this rust bucket can really do. The Defiant's transformation began at the molecular level. What had appeared to be patches of rust and decay suddenly shifted, revealing their true nature. The ship's hull rippled like liquid metal, shedding its carefully maintained disguise. Quantum computers, hidden within what had looked like exposed wiring and jury-rigged repairs, came fully online. By all means, Sarah said quietly, keep scanning us. Every scan just makes our countermeasures stronger. The Arctian fighters approached the Defiant's position, probably expecting to find a helpless human vessel cowering among the asteroids. Instead, their sensors suddenly went blind, overwhelmed by quantum interference patterns calculated from months of analyzing their own technology. Their weapons are charging, Rodriguez reported. They still think they can. She broke off, laughing. They just tried to fire. Nothing happened. Their targeting systems are completely scrambled. Of course they are, Dr. Hansen said with professional satisfaction. We've had months to study their weapon signatures. The quantum field doesn't just block their sensors, it prevents their energy weapons from achieving quantum coherence. They might as well be trying to shoot us with flashlights. The Arctian fleet's confusion turned to alarm as more of their systems began to fail. Ships that had proudly displayed their advanced technology suddenly found their sophisticated weapons and defensive systems turning against them, trapped in quantum feedback loops created by their own scans of what they had thought was primitive human technology. Message from their flagship, Kai announced, no longer bothering to add static to the transmission. They're demanding to know what's happening. Should I respond on a clear channel? Put me through, Sarah ordered, standing tall at her command station, and make sure they can see us clearly. No more artificial interference. The holographic display sprang to life, showing the Arxian fleet commander's crystalline features contorted with rage and disbelief. What trickery is this? He demanded. Your technology. It's impossible. No, Commander, Sarah replied calmly. Not impossible. We simply showed you what you expected to see. You were so convinced of our inferiority that you never bothered to look deeper. That was your first mistake. Their entire command and control network is compromised, Rodriguez reported with professional satisfaction. The quantum entanglement effect is spreading through their fleet. Every system they power up just makes it worse. Sarah addressed the increasingly frustrated Arxian commander again. You spent months laughing at our primitive technology, never realizing that every scan, every dismissive analysis, every mocking report was giving us exactly what we needed to understand and counter your capabilities. The Arxian fleet's formation had completely broken down now, their ships trying desperately to engage weapons that wouldn't fire and shields that wouldn't activate. The mighty armada that had arrived to crush a primitive human colony was now helpless, undone by their own arrogance. Signal from Fleet Command, Kai announced. The quantum network is fully operational. All human ships in the sector are reporting similar results. The Arxian attack has been completely neutralized. Sarah watched as the once proud Arxian fleet began to retreat in disarray, their sophisticated technology rendered useless by what they had dismissed as primitive human science. Send to Fleet Command. Operation Revelation successful. Phase 1 complete. The Defiant hung in space, its true nature now fully visible. The seemingly decrepit vessel had transformed into something that defied the Arxians' understanding of human capabilities. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. They'll be back, she said to her crew. And next time, they won't underestimate us. But that's all right. She smiled grimly. We've got plenty more surprises waiting for them. After all, they've only seen the first layer of what humanity can really do. Turning the tide. 3 days after the failed attack on Haven Colony, the Arxian hegemony had regrouped. Their initial shock at humanity's deception had turned to rage, and this time they came prepared. The new fleet that dropped out of faster-than-light travel was different. Their crystalline ships now covered in dark energy-absorbing materials, their weapons modified to resist quantum interference. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the Defiance Bridge as over 300 Arxian warships took up attack positions. The ship's true form was now visible, its metamaterial hull gleaming with purposeful efficiency, but Sarah knew they had only revealed a fraction of humanity's real capabilities. They've adapted their technology, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, studying her sensor readings. New shielding configurations, modified weapon frequencies. They're trying to counter everything we showed them in the last battle. Of course they are, Dr. Hansen replied from her station, no longer playing the part of a scattered scientist. They're doing exactly what we expected, adapting to fight the last war. She looked up at Sarah with a knowing smile. Should we show them why that was their second mistake? The Arxian fleet's new formation was cautious, spreading out to minimize the effect of quantum interference. Their flagship, a massive dreadnought nearly 5 kilometers long, broadcast on all frequencies, not bothering to encrypt the transmission. Attention human vessels, the Arxian Grand Admiral's voice carried carefully controlled fury. Your deception has been noted and countered. Surrender now, and we may yet show mercy to your colonies. Sarah stood at her command station, her posture relaxed despite the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Mr. Patel, please respond on all channels. Let's drop the last pretense of technological limitations. The communication system activated, projecting Sarah's image with crystal clarity. "This is Captain Chen of the TSS Defiant. We note your arrival and your technological adaptations. We're curious to see if you finally learn to look beyond the surface of things. You dare mock us." The Grand Admiral's crystalline features shifted in rage. "Your primitive deceptions have been exposed. Your quantum interference tricks will not work against our modified systems." "Who said anything about quantum interference?" Sarah replied calmly. "That was just the first layer. Lieutenant Rodriguez, initiate the Nexus Protocol." The Defiant's hull began to change again, but this time in ways that made the Archean sensors scream in protest. What had appeared to be standard metamaterial transformation revealed itself as something far more exotic. The space around the ship seemed to fold, creating patterns that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. "Temporal field active," Rodriguez announced. "All those months of them scanning us, they weren't just mapping our fake technology. We were mapping the quantum state of their entire civilization's technological development." The Archean fleet opened fire, their modified weapons designed to pierce quantum interference. But their shots seemed to age 1,000 years before reaching the Defiant, the energy dissipating into harmless radiation. "Fascinating," Dr. Hansen commented, monitoring the readings. "They really thought quantum technology was our ultimate achievement. They never considered that we might have mastered temporal mechanics while pretending we couldn't even manage basic shield harmonics." The Archean Grand Admiral's voice had lost its confidence. "What is this? These readings, they're impossible." "No," Sarah replied, "not impossible. We simply showed you what you expected to see, then what you feared to see. You never stopped to consider what we chose not to show you." She turned to her crew. "Deploy the chronodrones." From what had appeared to be standard weapon ports on the Defiant's hull, thousands of tiny devices emerged. Each one no larger than a human hand, they moved through space in ways that defied normal physics, existing partially in multiple time streams. "Their fleet is responding," Rodriguez reported with professional satisfaction. "They're trying to target the drones, but they can't get a lock on something that exists in 3 different temporal states simultaneously." The chronodrones reached the Archean fleet, passing through their modified shields, as if they didn't exist. Where they touched the crystalline hulls, the advanced alien metal seemed to age decades in seconds, quantum temporal reactions causing carefully engineered systems to break down at the molecular level. "Signal from Fleet Command," Kai announced. "All human ships report successful deployment of temporal countermeasures. The Archean fleet is being contained." Sarah watched as the mighty alien armada found itself trapped by technology they hadn't even known was possible. Ships that had been modified to resist quantum interference were helpless against weapons that attacked through time itself. "You should have wondered," Sarah transmitted to the increasingly desperate Archean commander, "why a species that had mastered faster-than-light travel still appeared to use chemical rockets and primitive shields. You should have asked yourselves why we seemed content to remain so far behind the technological curve." The Archean fleet's formation had completely broken down. Ships tried to retreat into faster-than-light travel, only to find their drive systems aged to uselessness by the chronodrones. Others attempted to fire their weapons, but the temporal fields around them caused energy weapons to discharge centuries too early or too late. "Their command and control network is collapsing," Rodriguez reported. "The temporal feedback is spreading through their entire fleet. Every attempt to counter it just makes the effect stronger." "Of course it does," Dr. Hansen added. "They're fighting against time itself, and time always wins in the end." The Archean Grand Admiral's next transmission carried none of his earlier arrogance. "In the name of the hegemony, I demand to know how long you've had this technology." Sarah's response was calm but carried an edge of steel. "That's an interesting question, isn't it? When did we develop these capabilities? Yesterday, a century ago, 1,000 years in the future. With temporal mechanics, those distinctions become fluid." The mighty Archean fleet, which had arrived confident in their technological superiority, now found themselves trapped by forces they couldn't even comprehend. Their weapons were useless, their shields meaningless against attacks that came from multiple points in time simultaneously. Message from Fleet Command, Kai announced. All sectors report similar results. The Arxian invasion force has been completely neutralized. Sarah watched as the once proud alien fleet hung helpless in space, their mighty warships reduced to drifting hulks by technology they hadn't even known to look for. Send to Fleet Command. Phase 2 complete. Though I suspect, she smiled grimly, our friends may need some time to fully appreciate what just happened. Victory through deception. The Arxian hegemony's response to their second devastating defeat came 3 weeks later. This time, they arrived with something new. A fleet of pitch-black vessels that seemed to devour light itself, powered by technology that even humanity's temporal sensors struggle to analyze. 1,000 ships, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from her station aboard the Defiant. Their hull composition. It's like nothing we've seen before. They've somehow managed to create materials that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Captain Sarah Chen studied the tactical display, watching as the massive alien fleet took up positions around Haven Colony. The Arxians had finally stopped underestimating humanity, but they still didn't understand the true depth of their mistake. They've learned, Dr. Hansen observed, monitoring the exotic energy readings from the enemy fleet. These ships are designed to operate in multiple temporal states simultaneously. They think they've matched our level of technology. Message from their command ship, Kai announced. The Grand Admiral himself is leading this fleet. The holographic display activated, showing the Arxian leader's crystalline features set in grim determination. Captain Chen, his voice carried none of the previous arrogance. We have analyzed your temporal technology and adapted accordingly. This ends today. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. You're right about one thing, Admiral. This does end today, but not in the way you imagine. She turned to her crew. Initiate final protocol. Let's show them what humanity can really do. The Defiant's transformation began, but this time it was unlike anything the Arxians had seen before. The ship's hull didn't just change, it began to blur, its form becoming increasingly difficult to focus on as it shifted through possibilities that shouldn't exist. Reality anchors active, Rodriguez reported. Quantum temporal fields are stable. Initiating consciousness interface. The Arxian fleet opened fire, their new weapons designed to strike across multiple time streams simultaneously. But their shots passed through space, the Defiant no longer entirely occupied, hitting nothing but probability shadows. Their weapons are impressive, Dr. Hansen noted, her hands dancing across controls that responded to thought as much as touch. They've managed to weaponize quantum uncertainty. 6 months ago, that might have worried us. Sarah's voice carried across all frequencies, reaching not just the Arxian fleet, but every corner of known space. You adapted to our quantum technology. You countered our temporal weapons. But you never asked yourselves the most important question. Why would a species capable of manipulating time and space choose to appear primitive in the first place? The space around the Defiant began to change in ways that made reality itself shudder. What had appeared to be a single ship suddenly existed as infinite possibilities, each one simultaneously real and unreal. You see, Sarah continued as the Arxian fleet's sensors tried desperately to make sense of what they were seeing. Quantum mechanics wasn't our greatest achievement. Temporal manipulation wasn't our ultimate technology. They were just steps along the way to something far more fundamental, the ability to manipulate consciousness and reality itself. The Defiant's true form finally revealed itself, and the sight drove several Arxian sensor operators mad. The ship existed as pure thought-given form, a manifestation of humanity's mastery over the fundamental nature of existence itself. Reality distortion field at maximum, Rodriguez announced. The consciousness matrix is fully operational. Their entire fleet exists within our sphere of influence. The mighty Archean vessels, designed to fight across time and quantum states, found themselves trapped in a bubble of altered reality, where the very laws of physics were subject to human will. Their weapons, powered by technology that had taken their civilization millennia to develop, might as well have been children's toys. "You should have wondered," Sarah transmitted to the increasingly desperate Archean commander, "why a species that had mastered the nature of reality itself would choose to play at being primitive. The answer is simple. We were waiting to see who would prove themselves worthy of sharing in these discoveries." The Archean Grand Admiral's voice had lost all pretense of control. What are you?" "We are humanity," Sarah replied simply. "We learned long ago that the greatest power isn't in weapons or shields, or even the ability to manipulate time. It's in understanding the very nature of consciousness and reality. Everything else, the quantum technology, the temporal mechanics, they were just tools to help us reach this point." The Defiant's consciousness field expanded, enveloping the entire Archean fleet. Within its influence, reality itself became fluid, responding to human thought and intent. Ships that had been designed to fight across multiple time streams found themselves unable to maintain their own existence as solid matter. "Their fleet is dissolving," Rodriguez reported. "The consciousness field is causing their matter to revert to pure probability." "Give them a chance," Sarah ordered. "Show them a glimpse of what we can share." Through the consciousness interface, she projected images directly into the minds of every Archean in the fleet. Visions of possibilities they had never imagined, of a universe where the barriers between thought and reality, between consciousness and existence, had been transcended. The effect was immediate. Across the Archean fleet, weapons powered down as their crews struggled to comprehend what they were experiencing. The Grand Admiral's next transmission carried wonder rather than fear. "All this time," he whispered, "all this time you were not primitive. You were ascending. We reached this point centuries ago," Sarah explained, "but we understood that true power comes with responsibility. We needed to know how other species would treat those they thought weaker than themselves. Your actions have told us much." The Archean fleet hung motionless in space, their mighty weapons and advanced technology rendered meaningless by powers that transcended the physical universe itself. Sarah watched as understanding finally dawned in the Grand Admiral's crystalline features. "The hegemony," he said slowly, "we have much to learn." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "But now, perhaps, you're ready to begin that journey. The question is no longer whether humanity deserves a place among the stars. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy is ready to join us in transcending what you thought were the limits of possible." As the reality distortion field slowly dissipated, allowing the Archean ships to regain their solid form, Sarah knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had revealed themselves to be something far beyond anything the Archeans had imagined. The war was over, but humanity's true mission, to guide other species toward understanding the deeper nature of existence, was just beginning. The Defiant would return to its patrols, but no longer hiding its true nature. The time for deception had passed. The time for teaching had begun.